Number 10. Losing urgency for things that once mattered. There was a time when that goal used to keep you awake at night. Not because of anxiety, but because of excitement. You would think about it while brushing your teeth, while lying in bed, while staring at the ceiling. It had weight, it had heat, it felt urgent. And now, it feels distant, almost optional. You didn't decide to stop caring. You didn't consciously walk away. The urgency just dissolved, and that's what makes it dangerous. Because when something fades quietly, you don't fight to keep it. Urgency is not just excitement, it's psychological tension. It's the inner friction that tells you, this matters, move. When that friction disappears, the mind begins to reinterpret importance. Your brain is extremely efficient. If it senses that acting is no longer emotionally rewarded, it reduces the signal, slowly, strategically. Sometimes this happens after repeated micro-disappointments. Goals that once felt close begin to feel abstract. The brain protects you by lowering emotional investment. It whispers, maybe it's not that important. Not because it isn't, but because caring without progress hurts. Other times, constant stimulation, scrolling, short bursts of dopamine, endless comparison numbs urgency. Big goals require slow dopamine. They demand patience, but your nervous system gets trained to chase quick spikes. The result? Long-term ambition feels quiet compared to instant distraction. This is not laziness. This is recalibration. When urgency fades, it doesn't mean the dream died. It means the emotional circuit attached to it has been weakened, and weakened circuits can be rebuilt. But first, you have to recognize that the silence inside you is not peace. It's a dimmed signal. Number 9. Feeling neutral instead of driven. You don't feel sad. You don't feel excited. You just feel neutral. And at first, that neutrality feels mature, balanced, stable. You tell yourself this is what growth looks like. Less emotional chaos, more calm presence. But deep down, something is missing. There's no fire, no pull, no internal surge that says, let's go. Drive is not constant hype. It's emotional direction. It's the feeling of leaning toward something. When you're driven, your thoughts organize themselves around movement. Even rest has purpose, but neutrality flattens that direction. It removes the lean. You're not resisting your goals, you're just not magnetized by them anymore. This emotional flattening often happens when your nervous system has been overloaded for too long. Chronic stress, constant comparison, hidden pressure to perform, they quietly exhaust your motivational circuitry. The brain adapts by lowering intensity. It chooses emotional efficiency over emotional ambition. It says, let's conserve. But conservation can slowly turn into disconnection. You wake up, go through routines, complete tasks, but there's no spark inside the motion. Achievement feels like maintenance. Progress feels like obligation. Even wins don't land deeply. They register, but they don't energize. And here's the subtle trap. Neutrality feels safer than passion. Passion risks disappointment. Passion risks failure. Neutrality protects you from that sting. If you're not deeply invested, you can't be deeply hurt. So your mind doesn't kill your ambition. It softens it. It lowers the emotional volume until everything feels equally mild. But humans aren't built for flatness. We're built for direction. If you feel neutral instead of driven, it's not that your ambition disappeared. It's that your system is guarding itself from intensity, and what feels like calm might actually be self-protection disguised as balance. Number 8. Starting days without internal momentum. There was a time when you would wake up already thinking, already moving in your mind. Even before your feet touched the floor, something inside you was alive, a problem to solve, a plan to execute, a vision to chase. Now mornings feel heavy, not sad, not dramatic, just empty. You open your eyes and there's no internal push, no immediate direction. The day doesn't pull you forward. It waits for you to decide what it is, and that decision feels harder than it should. Momentum is psychological inheritance. It's the energy you carry from yesterday into today. When you go to sleep believing something matters, you wake up with residual drive. But when days start blending together, when effort doesn't clearly connect to progress, that chain quietly breaks. Without that carryover, every morning becomes a manual start. You have to manufacture motivation from scratch, and that drains you before the day even begins. This isn't about discipline alone. Discipline moves you once you start. Momentum is what makes starting natural. When internal momentum fades, you begin relying on alarms, reminders, deadlines, other people's expectations. You move because you have to, not because you're already in motion. Over time, your brain adapts to this slower ignition. It reduces anticipatory dopamine, the chemical responsible for that forward-leaning feeling. Instead of waking up curious or hungry, you wake up neutral and reactive. The day becomes something you respond to, not something you shape. And here's the quiet danger. When starting feels heavy, you begin associating ambition with exhaustion. You unconsciously link growth with effort instead of energy. But the absence of morning momentum doesn't mean you lost your drive. It means your mind stopped auto-generating direction, and direction can be rebuilt. Number 7. Needing pressure just to function. Notice this carefully. You don't move when things are important. You move when things are urgent. Deadlines, consequences, someone watching. That's when you suddenly become productive, focused, sharp, but without pressure. You stall. This isn't about laziness. It's about borrowed activation. When internal drive weakens, the brain looks for external force to replace it. Pressure becomes artificial urgency. It floods your system with stress hormones, forcing clarity and action. Cortisol sharpens attention. Adrenaline narrows focus. For a short time, you feel alive again. But here's the cost. You're training your mind to believe that calm equals inaction. If there's no threat, no countdown, no external push, your nervous system stays idle. It has forgotten how to generate self-directed energy, so you wait, you scroll, you delay, until pressure builds enough to override resistance. Over time, this creates a dangerous dependency. You begin unconsciously manufacturing stress. Procrastination becomes a setup for panic. You delay tasks, not because you don't care, but because panic is the only state that makes you feel capable. That's not motivation. That's survival mode. And survival mode feels powerful in bursts. It tricks you into thinking, see, I work best under pressure. But what's really happening is this. Your system only remembers how to act when it feels threatened. When there's no fire, there's no movement. The deeper problem isn't procrastination. It's that your internal drive has been replaced by external force. You're no longer acting from identity. You're reacting to stimulus. Pressure should enhance your performance, not create it. If you need stress just to function, it doesn't mean you're incapable. It means your mind has outsourced its own ignition system, and anything outsourced can be reclaimed. Number 6. Avoiding goals that require identity change. Here's the truth most people never admit. You don't avoid the goal. You avoid who you'd have to become to achieve it. Big goals aren't just tasks. They're transformations. They demand new habits, new standards, new boundaries. They ask you to outgrow versions of yourself that feel familiar. And familiarity is comfort, even when it's limiting. When a goal requires identity change, your brain reads it as social risk. If you grow, some relationships shift. Some routines disappear, some excuses die, and your nervous system quietly asks, is that safe? So instead of attacking the goal directly, you lower its emotional intensity. You say you're not that interested anymore. You rationalize. You downplay. It doesn't feel like fear, it feels like clarity. But look closer. If the idea of success creates subtle anxiety, if imagining yourself at the next level feels slightly uncomfortable, that's not lack of ambition. That's identity resistance. Your mind prefers consistency over expansion. It would rather protect your current self-image than risk social disruption. Growth threatens belonging, and belonging feels safer than achievement. So you procrastinate on the goals that demand evolution, not the easy ones, not the surface-level ones, the real ones, the ones that would permanently change how you see yourself. And over time, you convince yourself the hunger faded. But hunger doesn't fade because of laziness. It fades when the cost of growth feels emotionally heavier than the reward. Avoiding identity-shifting goals doesn't mean you don't want more. It means your mind is protecting your current identity like it's fragile glass. The question isn't, do you still want it? The question is, are you ready to let the old version of you dissolve? Number 5. Feeling relief when ambition fades. Be honest for a second. When the pressure to be more quiets down, doesn't a small part of you feel relieved? When the voice that says you should be doing more, building more, chasing more, gets softer, your shoulders drop, your breathing slows, there's space. And that space feels peaceful, but look carefully at that relief. Relief doesn't always mean something unhealthy disappeared. Sometimes it means tension stopped, and tension is part of ambition. Wanting something bigger stretches you. It exposes your limits. It forces you to confront comparison, doubt, uncertainty. That stretch is uncomfortable. So when ambition fades, the stretch fades too. Your nervous system loves that. It prefers equilibrium over expansion. Growth requires sustained internal pressure, not panic, but productive tension. Without it, life becomes smoother, simpler, less confrontational. And that simplicity can feel like healing. But here's the subtle danger. Relief can slowly turn into resignation. What began as I'm finally at peace can morph into I guess this is enough. Not because it truly satisfies you, but because it doesn't challenge you. Ambition fading can feel like emotional detox. No more constant self-evaluation. No more comparing timelines. No more chasing invisible milestones. Just calm existence. Yet deep down, there's often a faint whisper, a memory of wanting more, a quiet pulse that hasn't fully died. Relief is seductive because it feels like safety, but safety and fulfillment are not the same. One protects you, the other stretches you. If you feel relieved that your ambition quieted, it doesn't automatically mean you've matured. It might mean your system chose comfort over expansion. The real question is this: are you at peace or are you slowly settling? Number 4. Mistaking calm for loss of drive. What if you didn't lose your fire? What if it just stopped burning loudly? Not all ambition is explosive. Not all drive is dramatic. Sometimes growth shifts from chaos to quiet. But when you've been conditioned to associate motivation with intensity, loud emotions, big declarations, visible hustle, calm can feel like emptiness. You wake up steady, no anxiety, no restless urgency. And instead of recognizing stability, you panic internally. Why don't I feel obsessed anymore? Because obsession and alignment are not the same thing. Early stage ambition is emotional. It's fueled by proving, escaping, compensating. It's loud because it's trying to overcome something. But when you outgrow that stage, the nervous system stabilizes. The urgency becomes cleaner, less dramatic, more deliberate. The problem? We romanticize chaos. We think real drive must feel intense. So when intensity drops, we assume drive disappeared. But sometimes intensity drops because you're no longer fighting yourself. You're not running from insecurity. You're not chasing validation as aggressively. The emotional noise decreases. And silence feels unfamiliar. Calm can be misinterpreted as stagnation because it doesn't create adrenaline. It doesn't create that buzzing urgency in your chest. But sustainable ambition isn't built on adrenaline. It's built on clarity. There's a difference between being flat and being centered. Flat feels lifeless. Centered feels steady. If your days are intentional, if your actions still align with your values, even without emotional fireworks, that's not disarmament, that's evolution. But if calm has turned into indifference, if you're no longer choosing growth, just avoiding discomfort, then it's not peace, it's withdrawal. The key is honesty. Did your fire mature into a steady flame, or did it quietly burn out? Number 3, waiting for external push to act. Have you noticed how you keep saying, once this happens, I'll start? Once someone supports you, once the timing feels right, once inspiration hits. You're not refusing to move. You're waiting to be activated. And that waiting feels reasonable, logical, responsible. You tell yourself you're just being patient. But deep down, there's a subtle dependency forming. Action becomes conditional. It requires permission from outside circumstances. When internal drive weakens, the brain shifts into observer mode. Instead of initiating, it scans. It looks for signals, encouragement, competition, fear of missing out, external validation. These signals temporarily energize you, but without them, you remain still. This is how disarmament works. You don't lose your ability to act. You lose the instinct to initiate. And initiation is identity-based. It comes from the belief, I move because I decide to. When that belief erodes, you start outsourcing responsibility for momentum. So you wait for the right mood, the right environment, the right push. And every day of waiting reinforces the idea that you cannot move alone. But here's the truth. External motivation is unstable. It spikes and fades. If your movement depends on it, your progress will always fluctuate. Over time, you begin feeling slightly powerless. Not dramatically stuck, just subtly reactive. Life feels like something that happens to you, not something you shape. The most dangerous part? It feels normal. Everyone waits for inspiration. Everyone says timing matters. So your passivity hides inside social permission, but waiting trains your nervous system to hesitate. If you're always looking outward for activation, it doesn't mean you lack potential. It means your internal authority has gone quiet, and authority can be rebuilt. Number 2. Feeling flat toward your future. Picture this. Someone asks you where you see yourself in 5 years, and instead of excitement, you feel blank, not hopeless, not anxious, just flat. Your future used to feel textured. You could imagine versions of yourself, different environments, bigger rooms, new conversations. There was color in the projection. Now, when you try to look ahead, it feels foggy, neutral, like thinking about someone else's life. This flatness is subtle emotional withdrawal. When the brain repeatedly experiences uncertainty, disappointment, or unpredictable outcomes, it reduces emotional forecasting. It stops investing energy into vivid anticipation. Why? Because anticipation creates vulnerability. If you imagine vividly and reality falls short, the emotional drop is sharper, so your mind protects you by dulling the picture. The future becomes practical instead of inspiring. You think in logistics, not possibilities. Survival, not expansion. Stability, not transformation. And here's the danger. Without emotional color, the future stops pulling you forward. Humans move toward what they can feel. When tomorrow feels emotionally neutral, there's nothing magnetic about it. You still function. You still plan. But there's no internal resonance. No spark when you think about growth. Just a calm acceptance of whatever happens. That acceptance can look mature, detached, balanced. But sometimes it's emotional distancing disguised as wisdom. If your future feels flat, it doesn't mean you lack ambition. It may mean your system has numbed anticipation to avoid disappointment. But a future without emotional texture cannot energize the present. The real question is this: did your vision become realistic, or did it quietly lose its color? Number 1. Forgetting what hunger for progress felt like. There was a version of you that felt hungry. Not desperate, hungry. You remember that edge, that restless dissatisfaction, the feeling that staying the same was unbearable. Progress wasn't optional. It was oxygen. You wanted to grow, to prove, to build, to become. Now, that intensity feels distant, almost foreign. You try to recall it, and it feels like remembering someone else's personality. The urgency, the obsession, the late nights, the constant thinking about what's next. It's not that you reject it, you just can't access it the same way anymore. And that's when the quiet fear appears. Did I lose it? Hunger for progress is emotional memory combined with identity. It's the belief that movement defines you. But if you've experienced burnout, repeated setbacks, comparison fatigue, or subtle disillusionment, your brain may have intentionally softened that hunger because hunger creates pressure, and pressure, sustained too long, becomes pain. So your mind adapts. It lowers the volume of dissatisfaction. It reduces the internal demand to expand. It tells you, you've done enough. Slow down. Slowing down isn't wrong, but forgetting what hunger felt like can be dangerous if it turns into permanent comfort. Hunger is what pushes you beyond your current limits. It's the tension between who you are and who you could become. Without it, growth becomes optional, comfortable, slow. But here's the powerful truth. Hunger is rarely destroyed. It's suppressed, buried under fatigue, distraction, emotional protection. If you once had it, it still exists. The question isn't whether you're capable of wanting more. The question is whether you're willing to feel that tension again. Because hunger doesn't feel safe, it feels alive.